Well, so thanks, Dela, for taking your time to be with us today and answering a few questions about frequency. I know that frequency is one of your little pet subjects, and we have talked many, many times on it ourselves. So, the main thing I'd like to ask you here, or to kickstart off this conversation, is what is your views on frequency? Because they are quite different to what is generally regarded as being best practice.
What's generally regarded as being best practice?
What is generally being regarded as best practice is to send less frequently because you are not wanting to, create an irate customer or an irate subscriber because you're filling up their inbox with emails that they're not interested in.
Okay, so the first question for me, for most people, is does that mean you can't have one irate subscriber? So you will ignore the needs of 9,999,999 people for one irate customer? Is that what the argument is?
Yeah, to a certain degree. I mean, everyone always wants to make all of their customers happy, okay? But you and I know that that's not, in the real world, it's not.
I want to run a successful business. There's a difference.
Okay. And actually that's a really, really good point too, because I know that a lot of what you are saying here today and what you've always talked about is based on the fact that you look past, just a consumer or subscriber happiness, and you actually look at the data and you crunch the real numbers, and your decisions are based on conversions and actual success rather than, okay, this is a nice, happy, client. But
Yeah.
Getting back to the original point, it's really just a case of, I think the main arguments has always been against your logic of send more frequently is the whole complaints and the unsubscribes and the deliverability issue and everything like that. So we could get straight to the chase, cut straight to the chase and start talking about that. Or else you could actually deliver your version first and then we can talk about that.
We'll do both, because in a way, the only arguments I ever hear about why people shouldn't send more frequently is deliverability. So deliverability is the last refuge of everybody who no longer has an argument. And they go, but you won't get delivered. And deliverability is very difficult to prove at the best of times. So just because someone says that 20% of all emails get lost doesn't mean that 20% of your emails get lost. And kind of in a way, the reason I asked the question was because deliverability actually brings you back to the second part, which people are obsessed with, which is engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And had you sort of come at me from the engagement angle, I probably would have said define engagement. So let me try a couple of definitions of engagement for you and see whether we're in broad terms in agreement on what engagement is. If you have a list of 100 people, for the sake of argument, okay, and in 6 months, one list, or you have two lists identical, both have 100 people in it, and one list has 60 people opening an email once in 6 months, and the other list has 40%, which is more engaged, the one with 60, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If you have a list of equal types in the same way, and one has 20% opening more than 3 emails in a 6-month period, and the other one has only 5% opening more than 3 emails in 6 months, which is more engaged? Again, the one which has more open. So engagement, by my understanding, is the number of people who interact with your campaign or your messages, right? The number of times those people engage or interact with your messages, and the consequences of that engagement. Sales, downloads, brand recognition, it doesn't really matter. So that's an engaged list. Now here's the irony. Frequency drives engagement. Okay? So if you take two people with identical products, identical lists, collected in identical ways, both opt-in, both permission-based, both good brands, right? And you have one person who sends 1 a week, and the other person sends 2 a week, I'll tell you now, the person who sends 2 a week will have a more engaged list. By all of those metrics, more people will open more once, more people will open more than once, more people will transact, and more people will spend. and more people will download, and more people will visit the website, whatever your metrics are. So here's the irony. The strategy of sending less emails will fail on the number one reason that people are currently using for deliverability, which is you've got to be engaged. Mm-hmm. And the most engaged lists I have ever seen are always the people with the highest frequency. Now, I'm going to invoke the don't be stupid rule. For some reason, when I speak, everyone seems to think that the only way to counter my argument is say, but what happens if someone takes you literally and sends 2 emails every 5 minutes for the next 20 years without taking anyone off the list? That's stupid. But within commercial reality, okay, you have to try to send more emails, because if you do believe that deliverability is being or going to be driven by engagement, the person who achieves more sends is going to have a more engaged list. So it becomes a virtuous circle. I had a very strong heated debate with Ryan Phelan of Blue Hornet at the last Email Insider Summit on this very issue. And he said, Dela, I want you to admit that in order to drive frequency, you have to do more segmentation and targeting. And the answer to that is a tired and weary yes. That has always been the case. But I've never seen anyone use segmentation and targeting as a reason to send more email. They tend to, until very recently, and I'll take that back. Morgan Stewart showed a great slide about how to send more email by doing more segmentation and targeting in order to create more opportunities. Here's examples that I've seen. Instead of anniversary emails, people are sending half anniversary emails. Then it'll be quarterly anniversary emails. Then it'll be daily anniversary emails. It doesn't matter what the reason is. The point is that if you can persuade your customers to take one more email, you will beat your competitor who fails to do that. So that's really the game. And then the final thing about unsubscribes, which is kind of interesting. Now, if you send one email a month and your subscriber can delete it with no pain, they don't really need you, they don't really want you, but being on the list with one email a month, that's no pain. Delete, 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 I won't unsubscribe. If you suddenly go daily for 5 days, you will suddenly make them think, hang on a minute, I don't want to be on this list because I can't cope with daily. So you're actually cleansing your list of the people who don't really want to be there, and there's the irony, it works in every single way. Again, let's invoke the don't be stupid rule. If you are cleansing your list faster than you put people on, that's silly. I would bring my frequency down until at the very least you're maintaining equilibrium. In an ideal world, you actually want to be growing your list. So that you should push the limits of frequency to such a point as your churn versus acquisition ratio suits you best. And that's a cost-benefit analysis, a piece of analysis that only you can work out. So my points about frequency are actually very sophisticated, and they assume that I'm talking to a sophisticated audience. Everyone else seems to assume that they're talking to Muppets, and that's highly irritating and offensive to the marketers who are listening. So if you're a Muppet, don't listen to me, right? Because you'll make a stupid move and do something silly. But if you're an intelligent marketer working for a company that doesn't want to get fired, who wants to grow revenues and make email the biggest channel that you can possibly make it in order to gain more investment and more resource in order to do your email better, start with, first of all, list size, and secondly, frequency. Those are the two most important things. And that's what drives my thinking.
Great. And just one last question. You're talking about pushing it to the limits. So are you talking about actually testing on segments of your database, or sending it to the entire database and working it out from there and understanding the frequency from testing? Okay.
Depends on how long you want to take. If you want to take a year to develop a perfect program and not make any changes until then the latter's probably the sensible thing to do. But if you're running a business and you've got corporate goals to make and quarterly numbers to make and sales targets to make, etc., 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 well, you can probably achieve both, but do it the other way around. To give you one of my, I'm quoted a lot and I bet this all the time, and no one's ever come back to me to try and win the bet because they can't beat me. If you send one segmented email a week, right, you can never beat me if I send 2 unsegmented. You can't, because segmentation is not going to get you a lift of 40%. Yeah. It won't. And even if you got it once, you won't get it every week, week in, week out. But sending another email to the entire list, in fact, resending to the entire list, just one message will get you a 40% lift. So the bottom line is start by sending more, and as you're sending more, do your testing. Don't do it the other way around. Don't go, okay, I'm going to find the least number of people I can send to, and then when I do that, I'm going to send as few as I possibly can. You're leaving 30 to 40% of your revenue on the table every single month.
Okay.
And marketers know this, and so here's the irony. One of the reasons email marketers continue to batter and blast is because it doesn't make commercial sense to listen to the experts. And commercial reality is what drives people. If that wasn't the case, then believe you me, they would do it. And I'm now going to counter what I hear people say. Oh, yes, but I knew someone once who segmented and got a 3,000% ROI. If it was that easy, we'd all be billionaires. And the reason why we're not all billionaires is actually it's hard to push the needle 5% year on year on year on year on year, right? It's really hard to do that. And people will take the easiest route that they possibly can. And if I have someone who's looking for the easiest sustainable route, and this is the question, and that includes sending more email, I would support them every single day. And the argument is about sustainability. Here's how I know it's sustainable. I would estimate that in the last 5 years, email volumes have grown 1,000 times, 500 times, 50 times, I don't know. It's a huge number, okay? Email frequency. 3 or 4 years ago, daily didn't exist. Now everybody's trying daily.
Yep.
Did the world implode? Did a puppy die? Did anything happen? No. Groupon got a valuation of several $1 billion, right? They created a whole category. Yeah. So if you want to tell me about frequency, frequency works because I'm seeing it working every day, and yet we're pretending that the strategy of sending less email is being implemented by a few really clever marketers and all the other idiots are failing. That isn't the case. Mm-hmm. The few marketers are probably spending more money than they should to achieve the same result. Mm-hmm. And the people who are taking the easiest route are conserving resources, they're thinking it through, and they're generating the revenue that makes their bosses go, you know what, I'm going to give you more money next year.
Yep.
Because you need more to make more, and everyone else is telling me that I need less to make more, and I don't see that happening.
Yeah. Okay.
So there you go. You shouldn't get me on questions like frequency and deliverability, etc., because they always wind me up. But the bottom line is, within reason, so long as your graph is going up like this, and email marketing revenues are still going up like this,
yep,
then investment in segmentation and targeting and clever stuff, which is what you should do when the graph starts doing this, is a waste of money and time.
Okay, interesting.
Apart from you saying, I want to prepare for that date in the future. But in the morning, what you should be doing is opening up the sack and filling it with revenue and growing your list and pushing your email until such time as you see it leveling off. And when it starts leveling off, then it makes sense to invest. And not just that, you're starting with a bigger base. So, for example, most people are probably making 5 times more revenue today than they did 5 years ago on their email. If they're not, where'd they be? Mm-hmm. So, if segmentation doesn't really make sense now, it didn't make sense 5 years ago, right? Yeah. But it might make sense in 5 years' time. And that's where it really does matter.
Okay. Well,
and by the
I know you've got to get going.
No, it's okay, because I've just been emailed to say they made a mistake on the call. I've actually got more time than I thought.
Oh, okay, good. So then we can have a quick 2-minute talk just about the nudge effect then too, because this is what it all comes into, isn't it? The nudge effect, and you're actually known for saying that email is really, really good for building a brand rather than just being a direct marketing channel.
Yes, I would say it's very good at leveraging brand, and it's also good at building, but in a slightly different way from brand building a la television, okay? Because the brand building part of email is the subject line, and that's not very... there's very little you can do creatively with a subject line. You can put a heart in there, you can put a star in there, But basically, it's a character basis, like a tweet or a text, an SMS message. So creativity is related to concepts and words only. You can't use images at all. So yes, email absolutely does drive people into store, and it does have a nudge effect. So that act in the inbox actually will make people go to the store or remember to go online and buy something, and they don't always email link to go and do that. And in actual fact, if you look at the DMA's survey here in the UK, the DMA FastMap survey, something like 22 or 23% off the top of my head of consumers who were interviewed said they have gone in store as a result of seeing an email. About 50% say they go via another methods. 15% say they then go to an affiliate site. So the email is nudging them to take an action that they maybe had at the back of their mind or they're forgetting.
Yes.
And I would put it another way. Which would you rather? Would you rather you be in your customer's inbox or your competitor?
Exactly.
Even if they're not opening.
Yes.
So let's pretend I can give you 50,000 people who are not going to open an email for a year, okay? Would you rather your competitor was in the inbox not being opened or you?
Yeah, definitely me.
Because it works.
Yes.
And so here's 3 quick examples of how that might work. Retail is your big channel, and most of our clients are bricks and mortar as well as online, so they're not .com only. So they have stores, and they have call centers, and they have lots of ways that people can get hold of them apart from email or clicking on the email.
Yep.
If your big day is Saturday and you send an email that isn't intended to be open to your subscriber base, and in the subject line it says, "Great deals in store this weekend," why do they have to open it? They're going to the store anyway.
Yeah.
They're going to be walking on the high street. They're going to be walking in the mall. They're going to see your store, and then they're going to think, it's 30% this Saturday, or great deals in store this weekend. And I see that happening all the time. I was in Gap only 2 weeks ago, and a grandma, mother, granddaughter came in, mother pushing the granddaughter, and she leans over her shoulder and goes, "Oh yeah, I think they've got a sale in Gap. No, they've got a sale in Gap this weekend. I think I saw it in an email." Now, that's a very powerful thing. I'm sure Gap found other ways of doing it, but the point is, they sent a message that didn't have to be opened, that had the impact of driving someone into the store, and if you look for it, you will see it all the time, and most people don't look for it. So, email is the biggest driver of traffic, and if you ask anyone who has a big list, when they send an email to the whole list, segmented or not, right? If they send an email to the whole list, they will see an increase in calls to the call center, they'll see an increase in visits to the website, they'll see an increase in visits via affiliates, and they'll see an increase in natural and paid search.
Yep.
They will see all of those based on the fact that they sent their database an email, and everybody knows that. And if you take a web analytics graph and compare it with when you send your email, all the biggest spikes are around when you send your email.
Yeah.
It's laughably